They asked me to do it, and I was anxious to do some live appearances. It'd been a long time since I've been on stage in front of anybody live. Well, I think the overall thing has improved. The overall sound's improved,
Everyone knew Elvis Presley wasn't just the king of rock and roll, he was the ultimate master of unscripted chaos. While other icons stuck strictly to the script, Elvis treated the live stage like his personal living room. From laughing through his own lyrics to playfully roasting his backup singers, these are the legendary moments when Elvis Presley had absolutely no filter. The Lyric Saboteur Las Vegas Laughing Incident. On August 26, 1969, Elvis Presley stood on the grand stage of the International Hotel in Las Vegas during his famous midnight show. He was in the middle of performing his massive hit ballad, "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" The track was a major crowd favorite, known for its deep romantic emotion and a smooth spoken word section near the end. Audiences in attendance always expected to see the polished, charming superstar they grew up watching in movies. Instead, this specific night became legendary because the king of rock and roll completely lost his composure. The direction of the entire performance changed due to a split-second choice by the singer. While looking out at the fans in the front row, Elvis spotted an audience member with a distinct bald head. On a creative whim, he decided to alter his own lyrics to see how the crowd would react. Instead of asking the listener if they stared at their doorstep, he leaned directly into the microphone and said, "Do you gaze at your bald head and wish you had hair?" Instead of, "Do you gaze at your doorstep and picture me there?" The situation escalated when the man in the front row decided to play along with the joke. He pulled his hairpiece completely off his head and began swaying it to the rhythm of the music. This hilarious sight completely shattered the singer's smooth personality. He burst into an uncontrollable, high-pitched laughing fit right in the middle of the song. For the remainder of the performance, he could barely catch his breath or finish a single sentence. The moment became even funnier because of his backup singers, the Sweet Inspirations. Soprano vocalist Cissy Houston, who was the mother of Whitney Houston, chose to maintain absolute professionalism. She kept singing her serious, intense operatic background notes without missing a beat. Hearing her flawless vocals contrasting with his intense giggles made Elvis laugh much harder. He even managed to gasp out loud, telling her to keep going. Normally, most major record companies would have buried a recording where their top star completely falls apart on stage. Elvis viewed his multi-platinum hits as playground material rather than a rigid script. He embraced the chaos. Years later, RCA officially released this specific live recording as the laughing version, and it quickly became a massive success with fans and even climbed the singles charts in the United Kingdom. But messing up his own lyrics was just the warm-up. Elvis was about to turn his live musical sets into a literal martial arts battlefield. Mid-concert karate and band hijacking. During the late 1960s and 1970s, his nightly performances evolved into something far more physical than a standard rock concert. The singer had developed a genuine lifelong obsession with Kenpo karate, a complex martial art he studied intensely under the direction of Master Ed Parker. He spent hours practicing his strikes and blocks in private rooms, taking his training so seriously that he eventually earned a legitimate 8th-degree black belt. Instead of keeping his martial arts training as a private hobby behind closed doors, he insisted on bringing these aggressive movements directly onto the live entertainment stage. Notice how his posture transitions completely from a traditional musical stance into an active combat position, showcasing the exact physical energy he brought to his live shows. This physical passion frequently disrupted the entire flow of his structured musical arrangements. During high-energy tracks such as Suspicious Minds or Hound Dog, Elvis would suddenly freeze his 15-piece orchestra mid-tempo with a sharp hand signal. The professional musicians had to pause their instruments instantly while the singer executed full-speed katas, which are intense karate forms, across the performance area. He even hijacked the musical production by snatching the metal conductor baton right out of the hands of his longtime orchestra leader, Joe Guercio. He would then aggressively wave the baton himself, forcing the massive backing band to speed up or slow down on a total whim, depending on his immediate mood. The raw intensity of these unscripted athletic routines caused frequent wardrobe malfunctions right in front of thousands of watching fans. His sudden, violent kicks and deep splits regularly tore open the tight seams of his custom-made, heavily sequined leather jumpsuits. Elvis Presley also began treating his heavy Shure microphone stand as an actual weapon, using it as a mock bow staff. He swung the heavy metal pole rapidly through the air, often missing his front-row audience members and terrified backing musicians by mere inches. This behavior created an incredibly bizarre contrast for the nightly crowds. Wealthy audiences paid top dollar to experience high-end Las Vegas luxury, fully expecting a polished, traditional crooner in a pristine venue. Instead, they watched a sweaty, 200-pound martial artist shouting loud combat grunts directly over a heavy rhythm section. It broke every convention of classic show business, substituting Hollywood perfection for raw, physical performance art. He ruled his stage with absolute authority, and no one around him dared to get in his way. If you think he was tough on his mic stands, wait until you hear how he treated the actual people sharing the stage with him. Heckling the backup singers. On July 20th, 1975, Elvis Presley's famous playful humor began mutating into public disrespect. He developed a much shorter fuse, and his patience completely vanished. During a 2:30 p.m. afternoon show at the Norfolk Scope in Virginia, an exhausted and completely unfiltered Elvis turned his live microphone directly toward his legendary backup group, the Sweet Inspirations. He bluntly joked that he smelled green peppers and onions, and that the Sweet Inspirations had probably been eating catfish. This was a deeply offensive and culturally insensitive comment that instantly soured the atmosphere in the packed arena. The audience sat in uncomfortable silence as the joke failed to land. And the talented women behind him refused to brush the insult aside. Elvis Presley went further to say, "Sorry for any embarrassment I might have caused you, but if you can't take it, get off the pot." Distraught and furious, backing vocalist Myrna Smith and several other group members immediately walked right off the stage mid-concert. Only one member of the Sweet Inspirations, Sylvia Shemwell, stayed on stage. In a classic display of Elvis's conflicting personality, he appreciated her staying, walked over to her mid-concert, pulled a massive diamond ring off his finger, and forced her to take it. Unlike the narrative's claim that he never apologized, Elvis actually realized how badly he had messed up the next day. On July 21st, 1975, in Greensboro, North Carolina, he issued a formal backstage apology to the group, and they agreed to return to the stage. But then, Elvis's legendary backing vocalists were not the only targets of his erratic temper. He regularly called out his world-class backing musicians right in front of thousands of people. If his iconic guitar player, James Burton, or his bass player, Jerry Sheff, played a solo that was less than perfect, Elvis heavily criticized them live on the air, making them redo sections until he was satisfied. He treated the concert stage as an open, spontaneous rehearsal jam. Because he treated the concert stage like an open, spontaneous rehearsal jam, he would sometimes stop a song and say, "Let's take that back to the verse." However, this was driven by his impulsive energy and desire to jam, not out of a malicious public scolding of Burton or Sheff's technical accuracy. He also loved to push his deep bass singer, J.D. Sumner, to absolute physical limits. He would command the gospel legend to hit impossibly low notes on the spot. If the voice of Sumner cracked under the immense pressure, Elvis openly pointed and laughed at him over the massive arena speakers. But Sumner, the veteran performer who had known Elvis since he was a teenager, fully understood the theatrical, playful nature of the challenge and played along. Elvis didn't just save this brutal honesty for his friends. When the mainstream media put a camera in his face, he gave them pure, unedited chaos. The press conference comedian. In June 1972, a massive crowd of journalists gathered for a highly anticipated press conference at the New York Hilton, right before his legendary Madison Square Garden shows. Reporters fully expected to interview a highly managed, media-trained superstar who would give safe, polite responses. Instead, they encountered an entertainer who completely dismantled the traditional rules of public relations with sheer honesty. Rather than hiding behind a corporate shield, He chose to treat the serious event as his personal comedy stage. When a reporter asked why he chose to wear flashy caped jumpsuits during his live sets instead of standard clothing, Elvis did not offer a deep artistic explanation. He playfully deflected it by saying the jumpsuits were practical for the stage setup and joke-challenged the reporter, asking, "Do you want me to wear a tux?" Another writer tried to catch him off guard by asking about his early career legacy and how he came up with his famous, controversial hip-shaking movements. Elvis smiled and told the room, "It was a nervous twitch when I first started. I couldn't help it." This brilliant ability to dodge serious traps became very clear when reporters grilled him on intense political issues regarding his military service and conscientious objectors. But then, Elvis completely bypassed the dangerous political trap by shifting the focus entirely, stating with total grace, "I'd like to keep my personal opinions to myself. I'm just an entertainer, and I'd rather not say." This unexpected humor was not a new tactic for the superstar. During a famous 1970 live press interview in Houston, Texas, he spoke with total freedom, but not about personal struggles or anything. Instead, he radiated pure gratitude and excitement about his massive return to live concert touring. When reporters asked if he missed making movies, he didn't launch into a rant about hating Hollywood. Rather, he explained that he simply wanted to get back to the raw energy of singing face-to-face for real people. He spent the interview warmly discussing his childhood musical roots in gospel and country music. The atmosphere was so friendly and filled with mutual respect that local officials actually interrupted the media interrogation to hand him an honorary deputy sheriff's badge and a custom Rolex watch, transforming a tense media interrogation into a light-hearted celebration. But while he could laugh off the media, his unfiltered generosity toward his fan base bordered on financial madness. The chaos of giving. During his high-energy live concerts, the singer regularly looked directly into the arena crowd to lock eyes with his listeners. If he spotted a crying fan in the front rows, he would casually slide a custom $10,000 diamond ring right off his finger and toss it directly into the audience mid-song without a single second thought. He also kept a large pile of spare gold necklaces featuring his famous motto, "Taking care of business," sitting on top of his stage monitors. He handed these expensive pieces of jewelry out to anyone who caught his eye, treating valuable gold pieces like cheap hallway candy. This extreme giving extended far beyond the concert stage and frequently shocked his professional financial advisors. On a famous day in July of 1975, Elvis walked into the Madison Cadillac showroom in Memphis and impulsively purchased 14 luxury vehicles in a single afternoon. When he noticed a complete stranger named Manny Person standing outside in the lot, admiring his personal custom-made limousine, Elvis walked outside, approached her, and asked, "Do you like my car?" When she said she did, Elvis smiled and said, "That one's mine, but I'll buy you one." He called her inside, told her to choose any vehicle on the floor, and bought her a brand new Cadillac on the spot using his own bank account. Inside the arena, his generosity became a highly organized, chaotic assembly line that required dedicated helpers on stage. He routinely went through 30 to 40 silk scarves during a single performance. He used each piece of fabric to wipe the sweat from his face and neck before throwing them into the screaming crowd. If his onstage assistant, Charlie Hodge, was even a second late handing him the next clean piece of silk, Elvis would openly scream at him on the live microphone, refusing to let the frantic rhythm of his giving stop for anyone. This intense connection meant he completely ignored basic personal safety and health protocols. When overzealous female fans tried to pull him down into the crowd, his security team would naturally jump in to protect him. Elvis would fiercely yell at his own guards to back off, forcing them to let the fans get close. He regularly allowed absolute strangers to kiss him directly on the lips during his walks along the stage edge. It felt as though Elvis Presley wanted to feel entirely connected to the people who made him famous, no matter the cost to his personal wealth or his safety. Once the house lights went down and Elvis retreated behind the gates of Graceland, the unfiltered behavior took a violent, eccentric turn. Backstage and Graceland madness. In case you didn't know, Elvis Presley's highly private world was heavily influenced by the Memphis Mafia. a hand-picked inner circle of close friends, muscle-bound bodyguards, and trusted employees who were paid to accommodate his every single whim. And because this group functioned as a permanent psychological echo chamber, they actively shielded him from the normal consequences and rules of the outside world, completely erasing his sense of personal boundaries. With a massive bank account and a deep love for loaded weapons, the rock legend transformed his historic estate into a surreal, isolated playground where no one ever dared to say the word no to his wildest ideas. The singer's complete lack of restraint became very obvious during his late-night television viewing sessions inside his private upstairs quarters. Whenever he saw a public figure, a politician, or a musical performance that irritated him, he did not bother to reach for a remote control or change the channel. Instead, his unfiltered solution was pulling out a loaded .35-7 Magnum pistol and shooting the television screen completely out. He famously blasted an expensive RCA set while watching singer Robert Goulet perform on screen, and his assistants quickly learned to keep a steady supply of replacement televisions in the mansion basement to repair the damage immediately. When he wanted to experience outdoor excitement, he organized chaotic, high-speed golf cart races across his pristine front lawn. He ordered his personal mechanics to modify these standard carts to reach maximum speeds, leading to middle-of-the-night demolition derbies that left the grass ruined and the expensive vehicles badly broken. If he felt a sudden urge to ride a roller coaster or go roller skating at 3 o'clock in the morning, he refused to wait for standard daylight business hours. He would spend thousands of dollars to rent out the entire fairgrounds amusement park from midnight until dawn, allowing his chosen circle to ride the zip-and-pip-and wooden coaster repeatedly without any fans invading his personal space. The chaotic behavior continued into the early morning hours with intense tactical games known as flashlight fights. Elvis and his companions would track each other through the dark estate grounds, using heavy metal flashlights and powerful firecrackers as actual weapons. This crude, raunchy humor also dominated his backstage dressing rooms. Elvis also regularly engineered complex physical pranks involving hidden fireworks, heavy water buckets, and unscripted psychological games designed to test his friends. But this eccentric lifestyle eventually took a heavy toll on his health, and when the public started noticing, Elvis fired back with terrifying rage. The infamous 1974 Las Vegas stage tirade. Well, the hidden chaos behind the closed gates of Graceland could not stay private forever. By 1974, the intense physical toll of his grueling schedule and heavy reliance on prescription medications became impossible to hide. Tabloids and music magazines began publishing alarming stories claiming the superstar was actively dying and completely incapacitated by substance addiction. Rather than using a professional public relations team to issue a standard written denial, Elvis decided to address the rumors directly from the stage. During his live concerts, he began stopping his multi-piece orchestra completely dead in the middle of his sets and delivered long, furious monologues that shocked the paying crowds. The situation reached a boiling point on September 2nd, 1974, during his highly anticipated closing night performance at the Las Vegas Hilton. With his former wife, Priscilla, and his young daughter sitting in the audience, an exhausted and visibly agitated Elvis stopped the music to launch an explosive tirade into his microphone. He loudly declared to the packed showroom that he had heard from multiple sources that people were claiming he was strung out on illegal substance. He screamed that he had never been strung out in his entire life, slurring his words heavily as his anger boiled over. He then issued a terrifying direct physical threat over the arena loudspeakers, stating that if he ever discovered the specific individuals spreading those rumors, he would personally break their necks. Rather than moving directly from one song to the next, Elvis increasingly used part of his concerts to address the rumors surrounding his health. Frustrated by relentless media speculation, he spoke candidly with audiences about his medical condition, explaining that he had been hospitalized for legitimate health issues rather than the stories circulating in the press. During a rough patch, especially around his infamous September shows in places like College Park, Maryland, fans were absolutely stunned. Elvis was performing one night, and this newspaper reviewer totally trashed him in print, saying he looked too big. Elvis, being Elvis, fired back, saying he was actually wearing a bulletproof vest and then dropped a "s" on the reviewer. Later that show, when the crowd got a little too rowdy with requests, he totally shut them down, basically saying, "If you don't leave me alone, I'm going to walk off stage and go back to my dressing room and play with my foot." This intense obsession with law, order, and anti-substance rhetoric eventually culminated in the single most bizarre, unfiltered impulse trip in American history. Crashing the Oval Office, the Nixon Substance Enforcement Badge Incident. The surreal event began in December 1970, following a heated domestic argument inside the walls of Graceland. Elvis became locked in a fierce dispute with his father, Vernon Presley, who was heavily criticizing the singer regarding his completely uncontrolled spending habits. Furious and entirely unmanaged, the entertainer made an impulsive decision to flee his mansion alone. He packed his police badges and immediately boarded a commercial American Airlines flight bound for Washington, D.C., using the secret traveling alias John Burroughs to successfully avoid detection by airport staff and screaming fans. While sitting in the aircraft cabin during the flight, Elvis grabbed a large stack of corporate airline letterhead stationery and drafted a rambling, unfiltered, 6-page memo addressed directly to President Richard Nixon. Writing with total urgency, he expressed deep panic over the growing counterculture movements of the 1970s. He specifically offered his massive global celebrity influence to help the administration save the troubled youth of America from self-destruction. Early in the morning on December 21st, his limousine pulled right up to the heavily guarded northwest gate of the White House mansion. Without any formal security clearance or a pre-scheduled political appointment, the legendary music figure walked up to a startled guard at 6:30 in the morning and handed over his handwritten letter. The primary motive behind this unexpected arrival was a highly specific, secret personal agenda. Elvis was intensely obsessed with acquiring an official federal badge from the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Substances. He maintained a dangerous, deep-seated belief that owning this official piece of government metal would grant him absolute legal immunity to carry his massive collection of concealed firearms and heavy prescription medication across any international border without facing law enforcement questions. White House staff members quickly recognized the incredible public relations value of the surprise visit and bypassed standard procedures to guide the entertainer directly into the historic Oval Office. Once inside the room with Richard Nixon, the superstar lost his filter completely when discussing popular music. He bluntly denounced his musical peers, telling a surprised president that the Beatles were a prime catalyst for the growing anti-American spirit and the spread of substance abuse across the nation. Not long after, the historic photograph of a heavily medicated rock icon shaking hands with the president eventually became the most requested image in the entire history of the National Archives, even surpassing requests for the United States Constitution. It perfectly masked a profound historical irony, showcasing a man dependent on pharmaceutical substances receiving an official law enforcement credential. Nixon's top aides bypassed standard protocols to hand the star the actual federal badge he demanded. This bureaucratic capitulation further reinforced his lifelong belief that standard societal rules did not apply to him. But federal badges couldn't save Elvis from his final, tragic downward spiral, where his lack of a filter exposed his ultimate collapse. The tragic final curtain. By the early months of 1977, internal damage became painfully visible whenever Elvis Presley stepped into the stage. However, the once athletic superstar appeared pale and severely bloated. This distressing physical transformation was the result of massive water retention triggered by failing internal organs, including his liver and an expanded colon, compounded by a heavy daily intake of prescription narcotics. Massive amounts of sweat poured down his face, and his breathing was visibly labored, even when he was standing completely still on stage. The explosive karate kicks and high-energy dance routines of his youth were gone, replaced by minimal movements. He frequently had to steady himself by leaning heavily on his acoustic guitar or relying on his backing musicians for support while performing. This agonizing lack of control became undeniable during the filming of a major CBS television special in June 1977. His mental filter was fading, leaving him completely exposed to the cameras. On June 19, 1977, during a performance in Omaha, Nebraska, he slurred his words heavily and completely forgot the spoken monologue section to "Are you lonesome tonight?" Instead of trying to hide his confusion, he turned his disorientation into an awkward, transparent joke, ad-libbing random phrases. The raw footage captured a tragic reality that his management could no longer spin to the public. When he walked out for his final concert at the Market Square Arena in Indianapolis on June 26, 1977, he relied on an established system to survive the night. For years, Elvis had used physical lyric sheets to perform complex, wordy anthems that he had not written himself. His dedicated assistant, Charlie Hodge, stood right next to him for the entire evening, holding up large pages for several key musical numbers. This measure was highly noticeable when Elvis delivered a powerful rendition of Frank Sinatra's signature anthem, "Me Way." Local newspaper reviews from that historic night explicitly noted that the legendary performer kept his eyes glued to the written pages to ensure an accurate performance in front of the packed arena. This reliance on visual aids and his onstage disorientation were the direct consequences of a collapsing body and mind. By the summer of 1977, the performer suffered from profound exhaustion, severe high blood pressure, and a heavy chemical dependency. Yet, while his short-term memory was fractured by his failing health, his magnificent, deep baritone voice remained incredibly strong and resonant until his final breath. When he finally walked off the stage in Indianapolis that evening, he exited as a man who had completely laid bare his physical and psychological struggles to the entire world. Less than 2 months later, the tragic trajectory of Elvis's unfiltered life reached its final, devastating conclusion behind the locked doors of Graceland. The death of a legend. On August 16, 1977, the frantic momentum of his chaotic world came to a sudden halt. His fiancée, Ginger Alden, walked into his private master bathroom and discovered the singer completely unresponsive on the floor. Immediately, emergency medical personnel rushed the global icon to Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee, where a team of physicians desperately tried to revive him. At 3:30 that afternoon, the medical staff officially announced his passing to a stunned public. While the preliminary report blamed a sudden heart attack, subsequent laboratory investigations revealed a much darker medical reality. The official toxicology reports eventually proved that his bloodstream contained dangerously high levels of 14 distinct prescription substances, including massive amounts of codeine, methaqualone, and heavy sedatives prescribed by his personal doctors. This extreme chemical dependency was the tragic result of the deep isolation he created within his mansion walls. Because his chosen inner circle constantly validated his eccentric behavior and fulfilled his every immediate demand, he lacked the basic boundaries that keep average people grounded. He lived in a permanent midnight world, turning his historic estate into a private kingdom where his word was absolute law. The global reaction to his sudden passing shook the entire political and entertainment landscape. President Jimmy Carter issued an official White House statement, praising the performer for permanently altering the face of American popular culture. Over 80,000 grieving fans immediately swarmed the gates of Graceland, transforming the quiet neighborhood into a massive emotional sea of public mourning, while record pressing plants worked around the clock to meet the sudden surge in album demand. The true legacy of the superstar lies in the unique way he managed his monumental fame. You know, Elvis Presley lived his life completely wide open, entirely refusing to adopt the safe public relations filters or security nets that modern celebrities utilize to protect their images. He exposed his raw flaws, his wild tempers, and his deep physical vulnerabilities directly to the public without a single shield. Despite his tragic physical collapse, his unmatched musical genius stayed perfectly intact until his final performance. He remained a vocal powerhouse who could silence a crowded arena with a single note, proving that his raw talent outlasted his failing body. His final recordings, delivered with incredible emotional intensity, showed a man completely dedicated to his craft despite his daily suffering. He chose to burn out brightly on his own terms, rather than fading away quietly behind a polished Hollywood illusion. His unfiltered life was a wild, unpredictable roller coaster that fundamentally reshaped the entertainment world forever. Which unfiltered Elvis moment shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to smash the like button, share and subscribe to our channel. For more content like this, click on the next video on your screen.